Welcome to the Aurora Education Commission podcast number 6. Today's guests, we have Dr. Susana Rivera-Mills, president of Aurora University, Dr. Michael Smith, superintendent for the West Aurora Schools, and Mr. Tom Kim, superintendent for the Batavia Public Schools. We'll get to hear what their top initiatives are, their challenges and successes, and what the future looks like for their respective organizations. All are current Aurora Education Commission members and leaders in the community. Welcome to all of you to the AEC podcast.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy to be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for coming out today. So I'm gonna bounce around a little bit. I'm gonna pick on a few people to start with and get the thoughts going, and then some just gonna open up for the collective response and see where we go from there. So Dr. Rivera-Mills, if I could ask you to share with our listeners some of your previous roles that prepared you for your current position.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. And as far as what prepared me for previous roles, wow. I've been in higher education for almost 30 years.
Wow.
And I actually went into higher education because I love teaching. So I went into higher education as a faculty member, and I always tell people my first love is still the classroom. That is my happy place. That is the place that I always go back to when things get hard, because it reminds me of why I went into this career. Since then, though, over the 30 years, I've probably held 12 different administrative roles, everything from department chair to dean to vice provost to provost. And I think with each role, I had increasing responsibility, bigger portfolios, bigger administration purview, and that allowed me to learn about different aspects of the organization, everything from enrollment management to fundraising, to athletics, to curriculum. As you can imagine, there's a lot of different facets in a university. And I think with each piece, I learned more and more. So by the time I had this wonderful opportunity to serve as president at Aurora University, I had a pretty good sense of what the whole organization entailed,
Absolutely.
what it looked like. And I think I had enough experience to at least feel somewhat ready for it. I think that you always learn a little bit as you get started in any new position. But certainly having a general sense of what the organization is all about was very helpful.
So certainly touched a lot of the rungs on the ladder.
Yeah.
So just as a follow-up, so what drove you? What helped you with your aspiration to continue to think about, I can take on more and greater and impact more folks?
I like that question because actually I was very hesitant to go into administration. I did not want to leave teaching. I didn't want to leave the classroom. And I had this feeling that if I went into administration, I was going to have to choose one or the other. So, faculty often talk about going to the dark side. Mm-hmm. That's not true, by the way.
Well, we've all heard it.
I know. But I think what my motivation is that as a teacher, I kept having to work with students who were experiencing the same challenges over and over again. I would have students that would come to me who said, I was told to do this and now I have to wait another semester before I can graduate. Or I don't know where to go for help with this one question. Or I'm having a tough time with financial aid. And these things kept repeating over and over again. And yes, I certainly was there to help individual students, but I thought there has to be a way to make systemic change, to actually improve the system in such a way that you're impacting a larger number of students so that a larger number of students can benefit from what we're doing. And I think that is what I saw the possibility in being an administrator, in being able to be more at a system level where I could change policies, I could change processes, I could launch initiatives, I could launch programs that in fact would help a larger group of students that I knew were finding the same obstacles over and over again.
Absolutely. Careful what you ask for, right?
I know. Here I am.
Dr. Smith, I'm going to ask you to share, and I could probably cite most of your resume, but if you could share where you started and
Sure.
what helped develop you into your superintendency role.
Sure. Well, similar to Dr. Rivera-Mills, it started in the classroom. But for me, I was with the little ones because I started as a 5th grade teacher and then transitioned to being an assistant principal at the elementary level for 2 years. And then I got my first principalship at Schneider Elementary in West Aurora School District 129. My whole career has been in West Aurora. Started at Nicholson, but the principalship was at Schneider. And then I transferred over to Fern for 4 years before a new superintendent came in, and there was an opportunity for me to transition into human resources, where I spent 10 years of my life until that superintendent moved on, and I had an opportunity to be the superintendent. So definitely enjoying the role that I currently have.
That superintendent to remain nameless to protect the innocent.
But for the audience's benefit, yes, that was you, Dr. Craig. I was able to join your team 11 years ago, had 10 years learning, similar to Dr. Rivera Mills, how districts operate. I had the opportunity to sit on your cabinet. So again, seeing how initiatives come to fruition, board relationships, community relationships through the lens of human resources administrator, definitely prepared me to step into the seat and find a modicum of success in my first year. Still have a lot to learn, but we're doing some good things.
You are. And I will do a similar follow-up with you. I know leaving that classroom and then taking on that first principalship and then taking that next leap into district office. What drove some of your thoughts on that?
You know, as a teacher, you come across students, you see the opportunity to help, and I promise I'm not stealing her answers, but a lot of our story is the same in that, similar to Dr. Vera Mills, you just see an opportunity to help others. And once you get bit by that bug, the desire to help as many as you can starts to grow. And that's what afforded me the interest of stepping into administration and becoming an administrator. In my mind, I thought the principalship was the cap.
Sure.
But then as a principal, you realize, wow, I'm one school that's part of a larger school district that's trying to do good things for our community. So at every step, there was this opportunity to see, I wonder if there's an opportunity for me to take a step into that next level. And along the way, there were people who saw a capacity in me that I didn't see in myself and were able to encourage and kind of speak that into my life and open my eyes a little bit so that I didn't limit myself, not knowing what I didn't know in some cases.
Good to have those folks in your life.
100%.
Very good. Thank you. Young Mr. Kim, can you share some of your previous roles?
Oh, I would love to. I just loved hearing about theirs. So I started out as a high school social studies teacher. And as many of us probably did when we were younger, was involved in everything that they asked me to do, and I was more than happy to do it. So I was coaching, involved in activities. And then one day, I was asked to consider applying for an athletic director position. So I've been an athletic director, then moved into an associate principal for curriculum and instruction role, then eventually a principalship. And then after that is how I found my way into HR, and then eventually where I'm at now today.
One of those guys.
Yeah. So I've worked in this is my 6th school district over my career, and hopefully my last. I love it there. But definitely had some great experiences along the way, great people that I've worked with.
That's awesome. And also would afford you the same opportunity to share. So you went from the high school classroom, you decided, you're coaching everything under the sun. That's what we all did. You just dive in, you didn't think about the clock. And then all of a sudden, you're an athletic director and there's some more responsibility. And then you move on to the next step. So what drove some of your decision-making?
Honestly, it was mentors. Similar to Dr. Smith, I never thought about taking those next steps. Every time I did take the step, it was someone telling me I should think about it. So, when I was a teacher, I'll never forget Art Roman and Dave Smiley walked into my classroom. They're my athletic director and principal at Elgin High School, and just had a frank heart-to-heart and said, "You're ready to do some leadership stuff, and what's your plan?" It was out of the middle of nowhere. It was my plan period. And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm so happy right now." So, and then each step along the way, I've always, I guess, just been very fortunate to have good mentors, people looking out for me, thinking about me, kind of to your point. Things I didn't think about myself. So, yeah.
The voice of that experience sometimes really comes to roost when, you don't feel like you're ready, and when's that perfect timing. And so all three of you and all of your organizations have reaped the benefit of you folks stepping into those roles. So we appreciate being where you are. And Tom, I'm going to come back to you. I'll have you start the list off about. You can pick one. You can pick a couple. What are your top initiatives that you're really focused on. I know you're just wrapping up your current school year, but now as you're thinking into the 25-26, what's your main focus going to be?
Our main focus is to really tackle the full implementation of our new strategic plan. This year has really, we approved the Board of Education approved our current district's strategic plan last summer. So we have spent all year working with our stakeholders, such as our teachers union, support staff union, the Board of Education. We're setting the stage to get ready to, as we've been doing some of the work, next year is kind of where we're going to really plant the seeds for everything now. And we're really excited about that. I think it's a pretty aggressive strategic plan, but one of the things that I've found all of our groups in our district really doing is partnering and following through on the things that we've outlined in that plan. And so we're excited about it. A lot of curriculum review going on. We're going to be doing a lot of overhaul there, a lot of boosting our sense of belonging work in our district. And I heard earlier, it's like we probably do a good job of serving most kids, or a majority of our students, our stakeholders, but how do we do all, and how do we increase that bandwidth in the students we reach?
That's good.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And it's funny. I just have to insert a little bit. I know I can feel your enthusiasm and excitement for that, but knowing that there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be laid. And what most folks don't understand is that now as our students have left our buildings, the three of you become super busy in preparing. They think this is the lounge time of the year, when the exact opposite is now we've got the heavy lift. How do we set the stage coming up? So certainly want to make sure that folks are aware of that. Michael, I'm going to move to you next. What are your top initiatives as you're moving forward?
Before I answer that question, I'm going to go back to what you just said. I've been to a couple graduation parties, and people keep asking me what I'm going to do with my summer off. Whenever I get one, I'll let you know. That's my answer. But in terms of initiatives, I will say in line with how you set us up, we're going to be focusing on implementing a new elementary literacy curriculum, K-5. And that in and of itself, magnified by 400 plus teachers, implementing with fidelity a program that we believe is going to lay a solid foundation for our students' literacy development, not just monolingual, but bilingual students as well. And that's why we chose the program that we did, to make sure, again, as Tom said, we're meeting the needs of all of our students, and with a resource that encompasses all of our students, not just one that we then have to adjust and make work in our system. So there was some intentionality behind that. And at the secondary level, definitely boring in more so on our pathways. We've started that process, but aligning it even more concretely, because we're seeing students, and Dr. Rivera Mills and I have had this conversation, students are coming as freshmen and they already have interests. And there's a way to identify a pathway of their instruction that still meets standards for the state of Illinois, but exposes them to career and different opportunities that they want to pursue in higher education. I think the term that she and I have used is the a la carte approach, versus you have to be locked into this program and maybe you'll see a class that might interest you. No, there are pieces that you can grab along the way, and that's what we're trying to do at the secondary level, is define those pathways, especially via our CTE offerings, a lot of AP and dual credit offerings. There's a way to get to the end, but not everyone has to follow the same path.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Susanna, if I could ask you to share what your top initiatives look like.
One of the things that impresses me with my colleagues is you can hear it, right? That we're putting students first.
Yes.
And I think the initiatives that we're all about at Aurora University is also about putting students first. We have just finished the first year of our new strategic plan, which is called A Unity, Fulfilling Our Promise. And we're very intentional in fulfilling the promise that every student who wants to attend the university will have access to a supported education, right? Where they can explore things and they can leverage education to transform their lives and the lives of others. One of the initiatives that is part of that strategic plan is what we call Career Skills Infusion. And actually this matches really well the conversation. I think at a time when many people are questioning the value of higher education, we want to make sure that we have the data, the evidence, the proof that the return on people's investment in higher education is still very much worth the money. And Career Skills Infusion is designed to ensure that students are ready not just for the job when they graduate, but to really think more broadly about what does it mean to intentionally design your career, right? And how can we give you the tools that you need to make sure that you can talk about your learning experience with us to prospective employers in a language that they will understand. So we take what we call the NACE competencies, which is national established competencies for transferable skills, and we infuse them into our curriculum so that when students are in the classroom doing things like working in groups or working on projects, they can then talk about what they're doing and how that translates to teamwork, or how that translates to leadership, or how that translates to critical thinking skills, which is something that they can then put together with their transcript and present to an employer and be ready as a professional. So, you know, we don't just want our students to be ready for a job. We want them to understand what it means to be a professional in the field that they've chosen, whether it's social work, whether it's education, whether it's nursing. We want them to really be able to present themselves as true professionals with the language, with the documentation, with the understanding that they are more than ready to start designing that career.
That's awesome. And we're just I was honored to be able to come to your Skills Infusion discussion. It was a lot of representation from the community and from the university, and really was great to hear not only about your internships and externships, but some of the opportunities that kids have. It's just it's incredible.
No, it's been great. And again, to your point, community partnerships are key to making this work. We have a lot of industry partnerships, business partnerships, other schools come alongside, and it takes all of us to make sure that our students are having the experiences that we want them to have, so that they can learn hands-on and apply what they're learning and really be ready.
That's awesome. I'm going to open this up to the three of you, so give you some time to think about, not specifically to education, but what are the greatest challenges that you're facing in your efforts? You know, we talked about there's a climate that has shifted nationally, locally, whatever it might be, and so what are some of those greatest challenges that you're facing, and some maybe some potential solutions that you've thought about?
So I'm going to mention this one, and it might seem a bit abstract, but it's really uncertainty, right? The uncertainty and the difficulty we have in even making a plan and following through, because so many things are changing so quickly. And it isn't just about, you know, what's happening with the federal politics or state politics. It's about technology. It's about emerging technology. It's about how quickly our society is shifting, how things are really moving a lot faster. Jobs are being created that didn't exist 5 years ago, let alone 10, 20 years ago. And so you make a plan, you make a strategic plan, but even as you make a 5-year plan, you realize that every 6 months, you got to check in, right? And make sure that the path that you're on is still relevant, it's still meaningful, it's meeting the needs. And then making sure that as you're moving your plan forward, that you're also dealing with all of the unexpected challenges that come your way. We're very fortunate compared to many of our peers. We have solid enrollment. We're expecting our largest class in AU history this fall. Wow. You know, we have the wonderful challenge of figuring out where to put all these wonderful students that want to live on campus, but we have limited space.
Sure.
And so that's a great challenge, and I'll take that any day. But even in a stable situation where we have stable enrollment, stable finances, et cetera, there's so many unknowns that feel like they could just, you know, just pull the ground from under you any moment. And so how do you plan? So one of the things that we're doing, just to at least feel like we always have a plan B and a plan C, we find ourselves doing a lot of just emergency scenario planning. So the leadership at AU goes through scenario planning, imagining, okay, what do we do in a crisis? What do we do if this particular legislation goes through and it impacts our students?
Those
How are we going to help?
Yeah,
You have to be able to have those and be ready. Again, it's no longer just about plan A, it's about plan A, B, and C as you try to navigate all of these unknowns.
That's hard to do sometimes.
It is.
Absolutely
it's a challenge.
Michael, Tom?
I like what she said. No, I would agree. I think, actually this morning we had an administrative council meeting. And so our principals, directors, and cabinet, we all met and it talked a lot about what we have on the summer's calendar for the work we got to do to set next year up for success. But we also did discuss like what's in Springfield right now, what's our state legislature looking at and what do we have to anticipate and plan for as well. I think that's part of the challenge, right? Is the uncertainty. I love what you just said. It's predicting what you can to the best of your ability as to what's going to come out of that uncertainty. But one thing that we try and impress upon and support each other with is also creating plans of how to move our organization forward without saying we're waiting for them to come and help us too. It's trying to be reliant on the mindset of holding that line, knowing that we're being asked to hold this line, but also knowing that we may not get some help. So it's our job to do it and figure out how we're going to do it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, if I was going to round out the three of us, something I share with our administrators often when I encourage their leadership is, as leaders, we have to hurry up and slow down. We have to see a year from now, but be present enough to deal with today. The uncertainty, just today, we were dealing with a situation that was resolved, but no one's ever going to know. But I know without that team addressing and doing what they needed to do, that could have blown up into something that disrupted instructional programming in our schools. So everything you talk about, what is a challenge? It's trying to mitigate the outside influence as much as possible so our people can focus on what we hired them to do, which is instruct and train kids. And that in and of itself is a full-time job at times. The fear, regardless of what's happening locally, nationally, or whatever, our communities look to us, and we have to be aware enough and adept enough and nimble enough to meet them where they are to continue their forward progress.
Well said. Well said.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Since this is an Education Commission podcast, I want to make sure I have at least one question that's specific to that. And I know the three of you, we've had these discussions before as a collection, but want to give you an opportunity to share to people listening to this. As members of the Education Commission, and I know you have perspective, how can the commission play a more effective role with our educational community and our community at large?
I think part of it is facilitating partnership. Okay, I think what you're hearing us say is now more than ever, it is so important that we collaborate, that we partner together. I know Michael and I have had this wonderful conversation about how the vision, right? The ideal vision is to create a seamless pathway from pre-K to 16 or whatever that is. And by seamless, what we're saying is, right now it seems like it's so difficult to navigate for students and for families going from one school to another and figuring out, how do I get from point A to point B? How do we create more of a supportive layer that can really inform, guide, and even mentor students and families? Because it isn't just about the student, it's also about the family, so that they feel like they have clarity around the options that they have in front of them and clear pathways to get there. So, I think now, it used to be that many universities would focus on recruitment junior, senior year of high school. Frankly, we need to start like in fourth grade. We need to start in elementary school talking about, the pathway possibility of, here's an option for you. And then how do we begin to message that?
Create awareness.
Absolutely. Yeah. I often share the story that truly was transformative to my life. And that is, I had a junior high teacher and a high school teacher who constantly asked me, when you go to college, what do you want to study? What do you want to be? At a time when I wasn't even sure I was going to go to college. But that difference between having a teacher, having somebody in your life that says when instead of if, is transformative. Because by the time I became a senior, there was no question I was going to go to college. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. But in my head, this when, right? When, what do you want to do? And I was dreaming about being a physicist and a interpreter for the United Nations, you name it. And I think our kids, regardless of where they are, need that group of people that is telling them when.
That's good.
Okay. When you go to high school, when you go to junior high, when you go to college, that we're constantly telegraphing that next step so that it becomes a reality for them. And so the question for us and for the commission is, how do we create that collaboration so that there's less of a chance that a student will fall through the cracks in those transitions between whether it's elementary school to junior high, high school to community college, or high school to college, or both. How do we do that so that we have less of that dropout rate and we can have that lift that takes them from one to the next?
You know, I want to expound a little bit too. I'm going to buy some time for you guys. It's probably the fourth or fifth time I've heard the reference to mentoring. That meaningful individual in our lives that made a difference. You talked about it specifically to you. We talked about your aspirations. Somebody got in your ear and said, hey, why not think about, hey, you're ready. Yes, you are. You've done the work. Let's go. But we can never talk about it enough when we think about whether we're a classroom teacher, whether we're a coach, whether an AD, a principal, but always being that mentoring person that encourages someone to take that next step forward. Because a lot of times they don't see it in themselves. But all three of you, with your vast experience, have made these mentions numerous times in your responses. And I just want to make sure we highlight the importance of the role of educators plays in the lives, just because they have so much impact and contact that can make some influence in a positive way. So I just want to make sure I kind of collected some of those thoughts. So now back to the two of you gentlemen.
Well, actually, just to add to that, Jeff, if you don't mind, I think for us in the pre-K-12 sector, it's like, as a building principal, impressing upon those leaders how important their hiring process is for any position they bring under their roof.
You bet.
Because you just never know who's going to make that impact for that kid. I recently read that quote, you know, every student is one successful relationship away from a life full of success, right? Just one. And so I think that's been something I've thought about a lot, because you're right with the mentoring. But I also, when people ask me about that, I can remember different other staff in a building when I was growing up and taking me from making some really bad decisions, but being just watching out for me, you know, and kind of putting me under their wings. And I really appreciated that. You know, to this day, there's some secretaries and maintenance staff even that used to even come watch me in high school play football when they were with me in junior high.
That's wild.
And they lived in the community and they'd come to our games and watch me play. So it just meant a lot to see them in the stands and they remember my name. And I remember theirs. You know,
That's
Mr.
cool.
Daniels, how you doing? You know, like it was awesome.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the idea of mentoring, because that's, to me, kind of that fix when we talk about like, how do we keep the educator pipeline moving, and how, you know, and that's partnerships with our universities as well. But it is often, I argue, the relationship you build with students to encourage them that this is a viable and amazing career pathway. And because, you know, for the universities, there's a role we have as pre-K-12 school districts to support our universities, because I think a lot of pressure is on the universities to boost their schools of education, but we're the ones that also have the impact to say to the kids, like, you should be a teacher. You can make a difference in a kid's life. And that's kind of how I got into all of this. So
Me too.
Carrying the water.
yeah,
Absolutely.
So again, rounding it out, listening to both of them talk brought to mind the fact that quite literally our fourth graders from our schools come to the Shingothi Center at AU to tour that center. But part of the tour is not just to see the museum, it's to see college, to see the university. This could be your future. That's in fourth grade. Our future educators have clubs, not just for West Aurora, but area districts that Aurora University is the hub where we come back and hear from the state teacher of the year to inspire the students who have shown an interest in going into education. In partnership with Aurora University and other schools, just like Tom said, we're taking student teachers. So there's a mutuality of their programming that's coming right back into our classrooms. And then I know too, with Dr. Knettel over at Wabanzi, what I love about the Aurora Education Commission, going back to your question, is there are individuals sitting at that table, both public and private, both elementary, high school, secondary, post-secondary, who are all coming together to share with the heart of supporting the community of Aurora, right? So that it's not a competition, it's a collaboration, and that's what the commission is about. From what I understand in my time sitting at the table and what I applaud, it was never been something where I've been afraid to share or wanted to keep something to myself. Quite honestly, it's trying to support our community and get the word out as to what is happening that the city affords and supports, and then how does that tie into something we can do as a school district, hand off to the universities, to our junior colleges. It's just that collaborative connection that outside of the commission, yes, we talk, we're aware of one another, but it puts all of us at the table at the same time. So there's some power in that.
And more intention.
Yeah. And I love that because, when I hear you talk about that story about coming to the museum, it's the difference between me and my son. Okay, I'm a first generation college student. So my parents were not able to help me. They had not gone to college. My mother didn't graduate high school. So it was very difficult to try to figure out that world. But by virtue of me being a faculty member, my son grew up on a college campus. Not once did he doubt that he was ever going to go there. So exposure, right? Exposure to college campuses, to see what that looks like, to talk to college students. My son was talking to the college president like he was his best friend, asking for baseball tickets. I remember being embarrassed and going, please. But he was the most natural thing. Exactly. But he was not intimidated by a college campus or the thought of like a university. And so I think these opportunities to bring young kids to campuses are huge. And I agree, I couldn't agree more that the Education Commission has this wonderful opportunity of being intentional. Whereas we're all working individually in our organizations, like you said, Michael, when we come together, there's a level of intentionality and strategy that we can move forward much further together than we could individually.
And if I could just add real quick, that's been the unique thing for me, finishing up my second year at Batavia. People are like, why are you part of the Aurora Education Commission? And I'm like, well, the city of Aurora sends the second most students to our district. And people are like, oh, really? I'm like, oh, yeah, we get hundreds. And to, feel the level of collaboration from the group, but also know that the attitude has been any of the partnerships that the AEC tries to help bring in for the schools or just for our organization is available to us, and that the Boys and Girls Club is a program that has started in Batavia because of the Aurora Education Commission. We're actually expanding now to our second campus next year. And we had one of our students who in the first year at our program at HC Storm Elementary was recognized at their Blue Star Night recognition.
Wow,
so, I think it's just a perfect example. So student-centered, student-focused, but collaboration, building around all of that. I love that. And I would definitely support that. Now, I'm going to throw a little plug in for Susanna. Oh. Do you mind if I share the email story?
I'm not
with
sure
my student. So I'm going to tell you,
we have the ability to edit. So
well, we had a senior. She's going to be attending Aurora. Super nervous when she came to BHS. That was not necessarily the trajectory she was thinking. Very much to what you just shared. She was not thinking all this stuff. And now she's attending Aurora University. So what I told her, I was just hanging out with her. She was one of the student helpers for the nurse's office, and we were talking. The nurses brought me on, Mr. Kent, you have to meet her. And we were talking. I said, let me do an email introduction for you. I know the president of that university. I know her. And she's like, really? So I emailed and I had her on there. Susanna replied within like a 24-hour reply. And she was very excited. Just FYI, when I saw that, I bumped into her like the week after and she was pumped. She couldn't believe it. So I just want to say I appreciate what you do. And
thank you.
That was really neat.
Yeah.
Good story. Good. You got to like those feel goods.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm going to ask you guys to think bigger perspective, 30, 40,000 foot perspective. And all three of you bring different lenses for you to be able to think and talk about. I'm going to talk to you about the challenges that we face in education today. What you perceive or you've identified as some of the biggest challenges and possibly some solutions you're either implementing or contemplating.
Yeah, I think for us is access to resources. I think it's becoming more and more difficult for students to have access to higher education because there's such a limited access to resources, and the resources seem to get more expensive. And by resources, I mean everything from the right technology, right? So that you can actually learn what you need to learn. Access to mental health services. Mental health is a huge challenge.
I think every podcast we've been on, mental health services have been huge.
And that needs, I mean, we can barely keep up with the amount of need that we have. But then there's some basic needs. Food, food insecurity, housing insecurity, financial aid at the federal level is now in question. How is that going to impact a lot of low-income families, first-generation students, et cetera? So I think, interestingly enough, access has been on the radar of higher education for, I don't know, probably 30 years at least, but we seem to cycle as to the level of a challenge that it is. And now we're cycling back to where it's top of mind for many of us, is how are we going to continue to provide the educational experiences that we know transform lives when the resources continue to be so difficult to move forward.
But we always seem to find a way.
We always seem to find a way.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know how to top that or what to add to that.
Well, and so,
it's
but
true.
part of it too. So the other half of the question is, what are we doing about it, right? And I think for us, even as a small institution, is trying to do food pantries. And I know that you're all doing the same thing.
100%. Quite honestly, I know you wouldn't say it yourself, Dr. Craig, but you spearheaded that very partnership with VNA in opening the Craig Center, where we were seeing hundreds of our students come October would become excluded as a result of not having a simple shot, just because access, to your point, and we were able to eliminate that. Just something so simple, but yet becomes a barrier to our students accessing a quality education. The other piece that we are bringing to the table is analytics. Not that it hasn't been a part of education. We're not using a heavy hand with it. But for us, we have to tell the story of the gains that a child has made that still puts them slightly below, but they're better than where they came. Because we're having to close the gap at a more rapid pace than just your quote unquote traditional pathway, because our students come to us with various challenges and at various levels. But we want to be able to tell them, look at where you've come from as we chart a path for your success going forward.
Absolutely.
And that's happening via our work with analytics, breaking down and really showing them the gains, not just for them, but for our staff as well. It can be disheartening to really put your heart on the line, blood, sweat, and tears, literally, and see a label slapped on you from the state. So we're not stopping there. Yes, I understand that we're still accountable, and I'll get to that in just a second. But again, we have to break down and celebrate what our staff, what our people, what our students, what our families are doing, while, as I said, not lowering the bar, because that would be a disservice to them as well. Right. Maintain the bar, celebrate where you've come, and show how close you are, because we're going to finish together. You're going to finish well.
That's awesome. So, very positive note.
Yeah. I do want to go back to the previous question about the Education Commission.
Okay.
Because I do think that when we're dealing with these kinds of challenges, they're so big, the Education Commission has an opportunity to bring partners in, right? So I'm thinking about Rush Copley, I'm thinking about Northwestern Medicine, VNA, which you mentioned. Is there an opportunity? Is there the possibility to partner at a higher level to meet the challenges of, health, the need for maybe clinics available, the need for mental health help? How do we partner with food pantries in the area that might have larger capacity than we do individually to help meet the needs of families and students? So I just wonder if there's an opportunity for us to think much bigger about the partnerships to meet these very large challenges.
Yeah, there's certainly some wisdom and strength in numbers, because the project that Michael referred to took us 5 years to get it completed, because it was such a heavy lift. And so there was lots of, we couldn't stand to have 400 or 500 kids excluded from school anymore. That just doesn't help them at all. But I'm sure that whether it's at the K-12 or the post-secondary, we all have similar challenges in that health and in that food security and that clothing insecurity. Those challenges exist at all levels.
And these are not challenges that you can solve on your
No,
own,
they're
right?
not-
We're
they're
going to
not
have to
simple.
figure out how to come together with other
Great point.
Yeah, I think that at that high altitude, that's another part of just the general challenge is just leadership.
Yeah.
Right. I think it sounds like we all have a very familiar story in that when we got into this just a couple of years ago as teachers, right, and professor,
that's right.
just a couple of years ago, it was a way of life rather than just a job. And, I think that saying, people don't quit the company, they quit the boss kind of thing is like same thing. We need good leaders to keep the energy and the momentum in education moving forward, and otherwise it is going to turn into someone coming in and punching the card and saying, I gotta go show up for my job, and then punch out. Whereas like Jeff, I think you said earlier, you come into it, you're just going the sunrise to sundown. And at the end of the day, you're like, all right, ready to go tomorrow again, I guess, right? And then you just keep doing it because the kids are the passion, classroom's the passion, right? That's it. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm gonna stay on a positive note here, and I'm gonna come right back to you, Tom. What are you most proud of in your current role?
Oof. I think what I would say is the relationships we're building with each other and with our students to continue to try and find ways to meet all of our students and where they're at and what they need to keep growing. I think we do a great job just in general in schools, in public education, but that next step, elevate your game. How do we reach every kid? What are ways we do it? And, keep growing.
Absolutely.
Keep growing. Keep focusing on the growth. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Michael?
Most proud of, I'd highlight it as something I get to do in this role, which is get out to our schools and see all the amazing things our teachers and our students are doing. There is nothing better than going in and seeing a little person walk up and say, look what I did, a little kindergartner. Or quite honestly, I was just in one of our middle schools and two students were showing me a mechanical conveyor belt that they had built to measure whether a certain color was passing through. Just blew my mind, but they're like, yeah, we just do it together. It's like, okay, a little bit more than that, but that's just being able to be in all of our sites and facilities and really see the awesome work that our folks are doing.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Susanna?
I think it's just over the last 2 years of my presidency, being able to raise the visibility of AU. When I was interviewing for the job, I felt like AU was this hidden gem, right? And I just really wanted the community, I wanted people around the state to know that AU was here and all the wonderful things that people were doing. And over the last 2 years, we have been able to exponentially increase the number of partnerships that we have with so many organizations, for-profit, nonprofit, business, industry, corporations. And it just brings me joy to see that level of collaboration, again, because it makes all kinds of things possible that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Absolutely. The last area I'd like to probe, and I'm going to pick on Michael first.
Okay.
You get to put your since you just went through graduation, so now you get to put your cap and gown back on. What advice would you give to aspiring educational leaders? You guys talked about you were on the receiving end of some nudges.
Sure.
What advice would you give, whether it's your younger self or someone that has the eyes that are wide open and looking for that next opportunity?
I would say, leadership and education needs people of character. And I say that because what we do, and you heard me say this before in terms of the hurry up and slow down, we see what could be or what can be. And we come alongside folks who may not see it themselves, and either we help them get there or we're the ones who have the hard conversations to help them see and transition somewhere else. Because we need people on the bus who are going to go with us, and we need leaders who are going to be willing to step in and have a hard conversation. But you don't have the hard conversation until you have the supportive one first. And if someone's not willing to meet you where you are, then let's move on and let's find the people that are. And that's who I'm talking to when I say that. Those are the leaders we need, because we've all seen it over the course of time. And what we do is too crucial to spend time on those that aren't going to get on the bus with us.
Amen. Tom?
Well, I think I'll go back to something that's done pretty well for me in my life. Back when I was in OCS, and I remember getting my peer evaluations back, and our commanding officer would meet with each person in the platoon. And it was interesting because I thought I had been doing really well, and I thought people were good to go with me. And then, he shared that some of the feedback was, I don't listen very well often. And so then, he had shared with me, from our perspective, you've been doing great. The problem is if you want people to follow you as a leader, they need to know they're with you and that you're with them. And so I think probably similar to what you just shared, Mike, it's about, I would say, do whatever you can to build relationships. I think the relationship piece as a new leader or as an emerging leader in our field of education, this is a people business. And, you got to build those relationships. Otherwise, you're not leading when no one's following you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Susanna, you want to round us off?
Sure. I would say build your network and say yes. So you've heard a lot about mentoring and building relationships and how important it is. That's about building your network, right? Build your support network, the people that you are going to lean on, that are going to open doors for you, that are going to open opportunities, that might sponsor you to meet certain people at the right time. And as they do that, say yes. I find, particularly being a Hispanic woman, I have been in many rooms that can be intimidating. You can have a lot of fear. You can feel like you don't belong there. Imposter syndrome is very real. And I'm not sure it goes away necessarily, but I do think that as you step into these doors, as you step into opportunities and say, yes, I'm going to try this. I may not feel ready, but I think I can figure this out. That voice gets less and less in your mind, and you can move forward. I know many wonderful individuals who would be wonderful leaders, but they've convinced themselves that they're not ready, right? Or they can't do it. And I think that when a door opens, trust yourself to know that that's the next step and that you can figure things out and navigate things through, because we need you. We need you now more than ever. Good leaders.
Absolutely. I can't thank the three of you enough for being here, for sharing your thoughts, your experiences, and some of your perspectives as we move forward. Mr. Tom Kim, Batavia Public Schools, Dr. Michael Smith, West Aurora Schools, Dr. Susanna Rivera Mills from Aurora University, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you.